Shalom, shalom. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Come on in to the house of Yah. In Yah's house is going to be all right. We welcome each and every one of you on tonight. And we, we, oh, I thought we were going. Okay. Okay. Just let me know, John A, when we're live. Just let me know. Because I thought we were already live. Okay. So I sent a text to Jaden instead of John A. Jaden goes, "What? What are you talking about?" Anyway. Shalom, shalom, everybody. Come on into Yah's house. It's going to be all right. Hallelujah. We praise him for his loving kindness, tender mercies, all his blessings bestowed upon us. He is definitely still in control, regardless of what we see with the nations and everything that's going on around the world, as we see the breakdown of even this country and this nation that we're in, and we're starting to see the fallout of it. It's going to be a slow train wreck, but it is going to wreck. It is going to go down, and a lot of people will not be ready. There's going to be a lot of people that's going to go down with the nation and the ship. Um, I don't think Yah wants us to. I think He wants us to be obedient unto those who set up the laws and things like that. But I don't think He wants us to be in love with this system. When He talks about love, not the world. He wasn't talking about the cosmos. He wasn't talking about the Pleiades. He wasn't talking about the sun, the moon, the planets. And when he says love, not the world, because when you look at it in the Greek, the world is represented as the stars and the moon and the heavens and the cosmos. So when you look up world in the Greek, it says cosmos. And he's not telling us don't love the cosmos, but he's talking about the system, the beast. There is a beast, and we're actually in the belly of the beast. We're in the middle of the beast, and Yah will not be our Elohim. Our Elohim will not be just if he did not render judgment on this nation. This nation is they're full of lies. They teach us one thing, they tell us one thing, and they are definitely doing something else. They tell us, okay, so here's the big thing of the day. They talk about democracy, and you know they don't let you know that when it comes to the highest office of the land, it's not a democracy, it's a republic. It's a republic. And so they taught us that as children, right? When we say, what do we say? The Pledge of Allegiance, right? And we say to the republic to which it stands. So we're in a republic. It's not a democracy on the lower levels, but when you get to the highest level, you're dealing with a republic because the majority does not win. The majority of the votes does not get you in. It's a republic, so it's spread around. All the different states have a say-so in the election of the president, and so we're deceived in a lot of fashions, in a lot of ways. They have taught such deception, and the first verse I want to go to is Revelation chapter 12 and verse number 9, and it says, "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world." He deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Notice now it says his angels, Satan. somewhere along the line, these angels decided to break camp and break from the Most High Yahuwah, and to follow under the auspices of Satan. And so they gave up their identity, and they gave up their glory, and there was a place of destination for them, and there was a place of judgment for them. This is something that's very characteristic with us. And when I say us, I'm speaking of humanity, all of us, and especially Yah's nation. But it's very common to give up who you are. It's easy to give up who you are. It seems like it's more difficult to take a stand on anything than to give up. Give up is easier. Take the least path of resistance, right? Take the least path of resistance. What does that? What takes the least path of resistance? Well, water does. Water takes the least path of resistance, and since we're anywhere from 60 to 70% water, that's what we do. We take the least path of resistance, and so in our studies, and we've been talking about something for the last few weeks, but in our studies, one thing that we have to come to terms with, which I think this is the reason why he gives us teachers. He raises up teachers. He raises up mores and moras and zakins, and he raises up rahas. And a raha is to feed you with knowledge and understanding, because everybody's not a raha. Everybody's not a zakin. Everybody's not a more or a mora. But we all have our place in him, and we all have to do our ministry. He's given each and every one of us something that I've noticed recently is how we're so judgmental on a lot of things. When Yah is in control and Yah is raising up his nation, now some of us are intimidated and judgmental on some of the warriors that he's raising up, because he is raising up warriors. He is raising up youth, young men, young women, that's going to be our future warriors for the nation. And some of us have a difficult time with that. We have a difficult time with that. Some of us are easily persuaded against what Yah's doing. And we want to be more divided than united. Because if I don't see things the way you see things, and you don't see things the way I see things, then, we're divided. You go over there, we go over here. And that's something that has always plagued Yasharel. And I think one thing that I want to get, there's several things I want to do, but I don't want us to be out of balance. Let me put it that way. I don't want us to be out of balance. Now, what do you mean by being out of balance? What does Torah teach us? What did Yahusha say the weightier matters of Torah was? There was three things that Yahusha said were the weightier matters of Torah. Judgment. What else? Mercy. Faith. Are the weightier. So when I teach Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, when I teach Torah, it's important that I keep balance. Because a lot of us just want to be heavy and lean to the other side of judgment. Judgment. You're going to hell. You don't know how many times I done heard that. You're going to hell. You're going to hell. You're going to. How do you know you ain't going? Because the only thing we want, we're out of balance. All we want is a judgment. He's an Elohim of judgment. He gonna judge y'all, and he's gonna judge all of us. Torah does teach judgment, But Torah, as Yahusha said that, and that's in Matthew 23, Matith Yahu 23:23. He talked about the weightier matters of the law. After he said judgment, there was what? What's right here? Judgment, mercy, mercy. And wasn't it King Daud that experienced mercy, right? He was judged, but he also understood the mercies of Elohim. And so we see how even though he can be very weighty and heavy in judgment, he's just as weighty and heavy in mercy as he is in judgment. And then also faith. Faith. So I can't be all judgment and no mercy and no faith. I can't be all mercy because you got some folks, they just so mercy, they don't think y'all going to judge nobody. You know, they think there ain't no hell. There ain't no, I mean, so you have the mercy, but you can't be out of balance where you have no judgment and all mercy. And then you can't have all faith without judgment and mercy. There has to be a balance in all of your life, in how you present yourself, in what you believe, and how you live your life. And you go through, and you are a Torah scroll. If I'm a Torah scroll, I can't be out of balance. And so many of us are out of balance. People are, their lives, they're out of balance in their character. That's why you see some people, they can't get enough drugs. They can't get enough of their vices. You go to some of these cities and you go to the inner city and you see people, how they live, and you go, man, what is wrong with these folks? You know, just we don't have that balance, but for us, he expects us to have good balance. I've got to know judgment, I've got to know mercy, and I got to have faith. And so in our Torah study and what we've been studying for a while, you have to understand that when you and I, everybody here, and probably in the sound of my voice, when you open up this book and you start to read it, and you're reading it in English, and you read it with the culture mindset that you have, you are immediately a foreigner. Immediately. You are speaking in tongues, if you allow me to use that vernacular. Why does he say they're speaking? Because you're speaking a foreign language. And you know what? In Isaiah 28, what did he say? With a stammering lips and another tongue or another language, a foreign language, he was going to what? I'm going to speak to them people. I'm going to speak to them people. So he speaks to us in another tongue, in another language. So I have to understand now, if I want to get to the origin, or if I want to get to where I can understand how the book was written, do I want to get to the meaning? And I don't think anybody has the full knowledge of this book, because even in the Hebrew, when they spoke the Hebrew language, then it sounds a little different today. And I'm going to say some of that tonight, because today we speak more of a modern day Hebrew, not the ancient. We speak more of a modern day. And for me to want to understand my Abba, my Father, for me to want to understand Yahuwah, for me to want to understand even his son, Yahusha, then it requires some dedication, some time, some diligence, because he even says, without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to Yah must believe that he is, and he's a rewarder of them that what? Diligently seek him. Diligent. So there's got to be some due diligence. So when I get into Torah and I get into study of Torah, I got to have some due diligence. I don't read it like a novel. I understand that I'm reading it in English, but then as I go into the not only the culture, because once you start to look at the culture and the language of the culture, your language defines how you see life. Your definition on words, your definition is how you see life. And how you see life was given to you. Was given to you. Everybody here I see right now went to a school. Kindergarten, first grade, elementary school, middle school, high school, college or universities, furthered our education. And all of your indoctrination was in a language that is foreign to the origin of Torah. So when I look at Torah now, I'm looking at it through an eyes and a lens of a foreigner. You can't help it. It's not our fault. We can't help it. I shouldn't say it's not our fault. We look at our ancestors, and that's why we're here. That's why we're dealing with this, because of our ancestors. So, it ain't my fault. It's their fault. But there was one thing that he said in Deuteronomy 28. There's one thing that he said. He said it was going to be in the seed. It's going to be in the seed. The seed is the DNA. The seed is what's passed down from generation to generation. And so it's in the seed of those. That's why it's undeniable who his people are. Unless you want to see it from a foreign lens and with a foreign language and with a foreign culture, then you can get deceived. Because remember, it's Satan's job to do what? Deceive the whole world. It's his job to deceive the whole world. So there's some basic things in here. So let's look at, because we talked about some things before, but in Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 2, Exodus 20 and verse number 2. Now I want to say we got to set some markers, okay? We got to set some markers. When I say God or God, what am I saying? What do I mean when I say God in just its origin of letters, God? When I say God or God, what do you see with just those three letters? When I say God, and it's not I'm not trying to get real deep or anything like that, but God, when you say God, what do you think of? A higher power? Think of one, right? Because when I put a S, when I say GODS, then what am I saying? More than one. So when I say God, just in the English letters, God, we're looking at one. When I say GODS, I'm looking at a plurality. Because we have an English understanding. That's how we understand. We understand that if you put an S on the brother, well, that's one. Brothers, well, more than one. I mean, as soon as we put an S on it, it means plurality or more in the English mindset. Hebrew mindset is totally different. It's different. That's why you have to look at this from a Hebraic and an ancient of days or ancient Hebraic understanding. If you want to get a little deeper and discover some of the deeper things of Elohim. So let me say this real quick. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 1. And I'm going to pick out, well, I might as well just start with verse 1. I'm going to read, I want to read down to verse number 6, but we'll start at verse number 1. And then we're going to go back to Exodus 20, verse number 2. All right. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of Daud, king of Yasharel. Now, this is Solomon speaking, right? But whose voice do you hear? Who's teaching Solomon? King Daud. King Daud. Solomon was a loved son, and he listened to. He was his father's faith. He gave the kingdom to him. He wasn't the oldest. He wasn't even the oldest by Bathsheba, the daughter of Sheba. He wasn't the oldest. But Solomon had an ear to hear, and he had an ear to hear his father. His father. And that's a cultural thing. It should be with us, because there's power in that. And Satan knows it. So he takes fathers out. He turns sons against fathers. Fathers don't want to teach their sons. I ain't got no time to spend. He's a hard head, roughneck. Kick him out. Get him out. You know, a lot of times that's how we treat our sons. And we might have a reason to do that. But Solomon was somebody that listened to his father, because in our culture, and this is what we have to get back to, in our culture, fathers must teach in the home. You have to. You got to teach your children. You got to teach your sons and your daughters. That's cultural. We want to throw them off to the schools. I can't wait till you go to kindergarten. If you haven't put anything in that child by the time they go to kindergarten, you lost them. You done lost them. You ain't got no patience. You got patience to party and club and do drugs and drink, but you ain't got no patience for your sons. No patience for your daughters. You got patience for everything else. You got patience for many lovers, but you ain't got no patience for a child. And that's a cultural thing. It should be with us. And we got to get back. We got to get back to that. But anyway, verse number 2, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. A man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. Notice now, ain't nobody got it all, and nobody needs to sit up top like they got it all. You know, we have to have counsels. We have to sit amongst counsels. Do y'all know Abba Yahuwah sits in the council of God's? It's in our Torah. Okay. Verse number 6. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. So the dark sayings, there's times where he spoke in parables. There's a lot of mysteries and a lot of dark sayings in Torah. But do you know what it says in Proverbs 25:2? Anybody knows what that says? Proverbs 25:2. Well, we look it up, right? So it says, it is the glory of Elohim to conceal a thing. Oh, there's a lot of concealed stuff in this book now. There's a lot of concealed mysteries and dark sayings in the book. And it's his glory to do that. He says, I am going to hide it in a book. Because y'all know what they say about us, right? All you got to do is put it in the book, because they ain't going to read it. Hide it from them. Put it in the book. So he says, hey, that's my glory. I'm going to conceal it. But he says it's honor of kings or royalty to search it out. I got to dig now. I got to dig. Do you know if a treasure was right here on top of the tile floor here, all you had to do is pick it up and walk out the door with it? Yeah, that ain't no searching. You ain't done nothing. It's sitting right there. And a lot of us, that's what we want. We want a gold nest right on the ground. Just mark the X where I got to go pick it up. I just want to go get it. I don't want to have to try to understand the methodology to how to get there. And then once I do get there, how do I know I have it? So there's dark sayings, but that's just his glory. But, you know, Shaul says in 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, he says that it's the Ruach of Elohim that searches what? The deep things of Elohim. So there's some deep stuff here. And it's supposed to be like that. Nobody, I listen to theologians, I listen to teachers, preachers. Nobody has it all. I don't have it. Nobody has it all. But he gives us bits and pieces. He gives us things, and then we can start to put the puzzle together. We can start to understand a deep or dark mystery. So let's go back to Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 2. I am Yahuwah, thy Elohim, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Now, notice something here, because he gives them his name, and then he tells them, I'm your Elohim. Now, when you see G-O-D, you think, and you'll see it up there, you think of one, right? Well, there's just one. There's just one. But if you look this word up, Elohim means a plurality. So in the Hebrew, when I say Elohim, I'm saying a plurality. There's more. Elohim. We would put S on the end of a word, right? And when we put S, now this is the English, and we're talking about Hebrew as opposed to English. In the English, we put an S. Sister, sisters, right? God, gods. That's just the English mindset. In the Hebrew, Elohim is just like putting an S on there. So what he's saying is, I'm Yahuwah, thy Elohim, thy powerful one. He is a powerful one. Because as soon as you say Elohim, you're talking about more than one. More than one. And you have to see this. You have to see this. And I'm gonna go through some quick scriptures real quick, and then we're going to come back here, because I just want to show you that when you say God in English, you're saying one, and then you say gods, and you're saying a plurality. In the Hebrew, Elohim is plurality. What do you think is singular in Hebrew? Elohe? Elohe? Huh? Anybody else? Well, he gave you his name. I'm going to give you my name. And that's what he told Moses. He says, your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they didn't know my name. They knew me as, what did they know him as? El Shaddai, right? That's how they know El Shaddai. So so when we go back from Moses' time, we go back and we see Yahuwah, like in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. That should let you know Moses is writing it from his time point and perspective. He's looking back and saying, that was Yahuwah. Not that they called him Yahuwah, because nobody knew his name until he gave his name to Moses. So, everybody, are you still with me? Everybody still with me? Okay. So, let's go to Genesis chapter 1 and verse number 26. And Elohim said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So Elohim, one of the powerful ones, Elohim, created man in his image. In the image of Elohim created he him, male and female created he them. So we have a creation, right? We have a creation, right? And notice now in verse 26, it's let us, because when you say Elohim, you're talking about more than one. More than one. So let's go to Genesis chapter 3, and I think it's verse 22. Genesis 3:22. Notice now, Musha is looking back, right? Because back then, at this time, they didn't know his name was Yahuwah. So, and Yahuwah, Elohim, said, behold, the man is become, as what? Why would it put us in there? Why would they put us in there? Just like in Genesis 1:26, why would they put us in there? You got Elohim means more than one. Elohim means more than one. So let's go to Psalms chapter 82 and verse number 1. Elohim standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the Elohim. Now, see, in English now, they put a S on there, right? To make it look like it's plural. But it's the same word. And you guys can look it up. I mean, you can look these words up. There's some things we might look up, but you can look these words up. It's Elohim. So Elohim standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the Elohims. How long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Now he's judging Elohims, and he has a council of Elohims, and he's judging them. Defend the poor and the fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I wonder whose fault it is. Whose fault is it that the whole foundation of the earth is out of course? I have said this, notice now, I have said, ye gods, ye Elohim, and all of you Elohims are what? Notice now in verse number 6, this is where we can start to make a determination from, remember I asked you about, if Elohim is plural, how do you know what a singular one is? So if you go down to verse number 6, and we'll look up the Most High, because in English we say the Most High, but if you were speaking in Hebrew, this is what you would say, and it's H5945. H5945, and here is the root. This is the root meaning of it. The pictograph, and it looks like an eye, is a picture of the eye representing knowledge and experience. The staff is a picture of a shepherd's staff or yoke. Combine these, mean experience, the staff, the yoke. A staff is lifted over the shoulder, is attached to the oxen for performing work. Exchange of the sound of the ayin and the C and the additional R. So we're going to go down. Notice now it's all. The root word is all. When we say all, we're speaking more of a Syriac Hebrew or a Arabic type of Hebrew when we say all. When you say El, what do you think you're speaking when you say El? We're speaking more of a modern day type of Hebrew when we say El. People say Elohim, that's more of a modern day. Elohim is more of a more ancient Syriac. So you're going further back with the Elohim. And so it's all or El, okay? So we're going to go down here to A and FJ, but just look at what this is saying. Above, ascent, pestle, trench, rising, youth. These are different meanings for the word depending on the context that we're using it in. So we want to get down here to, what did I say it was at the beginning? It's FJ? Okay. So let's go A and FJ to get it in its context. Now, one thing that we're going to see as we study this, because we're going to look up Elohim too if I have time. Here it is. FJ. And it's Elion, Alion, Alion or Elion, Elion or Alion. And Alion means high, upper, higher, highest, above, uppermost. So when we're saying the most high, we're saying Elion or El Elyon. Have you heard that before? El Elyon. So El Elyon or Alion, Al Alion or El Elyon is a singular one that's above all. He sits above all. He's a singular one. So when you say Elohim, you're talking about a plurality, but when you say El Elyon, what you're talking about is one that sits above all. He sits above all. And that's why we say most high. Because if we just say God, and some people say most high God. So you're saying El Elyon Elohim. In the Hebrew, that's what it would be. El Elyon Elohim. That's the most high God, or the one who sits above all the others. So when you see, now I want to go, let's go back. So El Elyon is singular, El Elyon. And El Elyon means you can't go any higher. You can't go any higher than El Elyon. So when you have El Elyon, Elohim, Els, how do I ask this question? Let's look at, so he said in verse 6, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you the children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O Elohim, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit how many? All nations. Because his first inheritance was who? Yasharel. Jacob was his first. That's what his inheritance was. But because the whole world is out of course, because we see what's going on and everything, he is, not only is he going to judge the gods, he's going to judge the earth, and then he's going to inherit all nations. Because right now we have to understand that before this happens, he's going to fulfill his covenant with who? Yasharel or Jacob. He's got to fulfill that covenant with them, because this, when we read this, this is coming at the end. This is down the road some. He's going to judge the whole earth. The whole earth is going to be brought under judgment. And then he's going to inherit all. He said, I'm taking all these nations. He said, all them gods, you're going to die like men. Who knows what it is said in Isaiah 14, where he says he's going to, I will do all of this. Remember, he was saying that. He was a prince, and he says, I'm going to ascend up to the north. I'm going to sit on the congregation of the north. I'm going to be all like this. And the last thing he says, I will be like the, but then he says, oh, you're going to die like a what? You're going to die like a man. He knocked him down, and he was expelled from the Shamaim, and that prince, and he is Satan, the devil, the serpent, and everything. He's going to die like a man. He's going to die like a man. So now let's go back to Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 2. I am Yahuwah, I'm your Elohim. Now, I want to look up this Elohim here in the Hebrew, and it's H430. H430. So we'll click on that. And it's the root word is all, or el or all. And we kind of read this before, right? Of what it is. And so we're going to go down to, well, let's read some of this. You got the ox head. It's a picture of an ox head, also represents its strength. The shaft is a picture of a shepherd staff, and also represents the authority of the shepherd. Combined, these two pictographs mean the strong authority. So when we say all or El, he's our Elohim. If we say El, he's our El, that means he's the strong one with authority. And can be anyone or thing of strong authority. Listen to this. The yoke is understood as a staff on the shoulders in order to harness their power for pulling loads such as a wagon or plow. Hence, the two pictographs can also represent the ox in the yoke. Often, two oxen were yoked together. An older, more experienced ox would be teamed up with a younger, less experienced ox. The older ox in the yoke is the strong authority who through the yoke teaches the younger ox. So, anything come to your mind? Okay, so we're talking about a yoke. Often two oxen were yoked together. An older, more experienced ox would be teamed up with a younger, less experienced ox. The older ox in the yoke is the strong authority, who through the yoke teaches the younger ox. What does that sound like? The elder teaching younger, the father teaching the son. Mm-hmm. What did Yahusha say? In Matif Yahu 11 and 28, is it? What did Yahusha say? Give you guys a second real quick to look that up. What did Yahusha say? Matif Yahu 11:28. 11:28. What does he say? And then verse 29. So Yahusha is saying, I'm the older ox. I'm yoked with you. You're the younger one. I got to teach you. Because didn't he say, learn of me? So now keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Okay, we got to get down here to, because here's power. Elohim means power. It means oath. Okay. Now, in this one here, in Exodus 20 and 2, and we're looking up Elohim, H430, and in the context, now we have to use it in its context, right? So the context was H and C. So I go down here to H. H means to swear a yoke. The yoking together of what? Two parties. A treaty or covenant binds two parties together through an oath or through an oath. The oath included blessings for abiding by the covenant and curses for breaking the covenant. Deuteronomy 28, and it tells you, see, Deuteronomy 28. The Elohim of the Hebrews was seen as the older ox that is yoked to his people in a covenant relationship. So in this context, who is the older ox in this context? Elohim. Yahuwah, Elohim is the older ox. And then who is the younger one that's in that yoke or in that covenant with them? Yasharel. Sons of Jacob, Yasharel. Notice now, it was Yahuwah Elohim. I'm going to be yoked with you. I'm your Elohim. I'm your king. But what did Yasharel want? What did Yasharel say? They said, we don't want you as our king. Give us a man to rule over us. Did you hear that? Give us a man to rule over. And so Elohim says, okay, I'm going to give you a man to rule over you in time. Because who does the king pass the authority and the kingdom down to? So he says, okay, I want to be your king over you, but since you don't want me as a king and you're going to break my covenant, I'm going to give you a king. So who did he give us as a king? He gave us Yahusha as a king. This is our king. And so he comes unto his own. We don't want you. Wait a minute. So Abba Yah saying, wait a minute. You were in a covenant with me, and then you didn't want me to rule over you or you didn't want to be yoked to me. You wanted a man or a king, so I'm going to give you one. Well, everybody thinks of Saul, Dawood, and everything, but all of that was, he made a covenant with the throne of Dawood, talking about his son, Yahusha, that was coming to reign over his people. And that's why Yahusha says, hey, take my yoke. I'm the one now. I'm the one. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Just like with Abba Yahuwah. But they couldn't stay yoked or in covenant with Yahuwah. And they couldn't stay in yoke and in covenant to Yahusha. Because Yahusha says in Luke 19, he says, him that doesn't want me to what? Reign over him? Bring him here. Bring him here and slay him in front of me, because he is going to reign over, because this is what we ask for. We don't realize it. We ask for Yahusha. We ask for him. And then when he gives it to us, when he gives us his only begotten son, because he didn't come like King Daud or King Solomon. He was born in the manger. He was lowly. He took a beating. What king gonna take a beating? And they mocked him. They put a purple robe on him, put a crown of thorns on his head, and mocked him. And it was Yasharel that slapped him in his face, spit upon him. Oh, yeah, it was the Romans that beat him, but he went through the crowd of Yasharel. It was Yasharel that buffeted him, that spit in his, that plucked his beard out. That was Yasharel. We didn't. Be careful what you ask for, because Yah, now he'll give it to you, but a lot of times it's not packaged like you want it packaged. Because when we ask Yah of something and we want Yah and we expect Yah to, I know he heard my prayer, I know he's going to give it to you, and he can answer you, but because it's not packaged the way you want it, you reject it. You reject it. Okay. So go back to Exodus 20:2. Now, verse number 3. Now, this is we're just dealing with the first commandment, but we have to understand that there is more than one Elohim. There's more than one. When we say Elohim, there's more than one. But our understanding of Torah and this book is so heavily persuaded by the Greeks and the Romans and English. Do you know how many they gave us? The Roman religion, how many did they say? 3. They said 3. There's 3 gods, because they know what Elohim means is more than one. And so they had a plurality of God. Now, I'm trying to set this up because there's a difference between a God or Elohim and an idol. Because a lot of times we have idols and we say those idols are gods. Not from a Hebraic. If you want to look at it from an English standpoint, okay, fine. I mean, if you want to look at it from a late to the party Englishman, and you want to take the idol and say, well, that's a god, okay. But in the Hebraic culture and the understanding of this book, it's an idol. You have idols, then you have Elohims. And the Elohims are way above all of these idols. Has anybody studied Greek mythology? Yeah, and seen their gods? It ain't no little, and I'm going to make a god out of my car. No, you'll make an idol. It'll be an idol. It could be an idol, but it's not an Elohim. But we say God because we're short on intelligence when it comes to. Now, I'm not calling people. I'm just saying we're kind of short on intelligence when it comes to understanding El Elyon, Elohim, Yahuwah. When we try to explain that, we're kind of short because our understanding now is rooted in English kindergarten, first grade, middle school, high school, Sunday school. That's where we're rooted. So when you try to start to talk about something, well, let's get into some of the darker things in the Torah. Then you're going to say, nah, a lot of times it's dismissed. To be honest with you, the more I study this, the more I see how far removed we are and the reason why we're so easily persuaded. Because we just don't have rudimentary understanding of Torah. And I heard Zaki say it, but this is not a universal book. It's not. Other nations, they have their books. This was a book that was given to a Hebraic people from a family, because you have other Hebrews that are not Israelites. You could be a Hebrew, not be an Israelite. Because Abraham was a Hebrew. He came down through the lineage of Hebrew, and he had a lot of sons, but Abraham was not an Israelite. And notice how his name was changed from Abram to Abraham, because he was going to be over many nations. It's a plurality. But anyway, because that, instead of putting an S, we always put an S on the end, but in Hebrew it's I am, him. That's like an S. So, but when did the Israelites come? If Abraham was a Hebrew but not an Israelite, that means all his sons were Hebrews. That means Ishmael was a Hebrew. That means Isaac was a Hebrew. That means Midian, who was a son of Keturah, was a Hebrew. All his seed were Hebrews. So Ishmael was a Hebrew, but he was not a Israelite. And so you get down to Isaac, and he had two sons, Esau and Jacob, and they were both Hebrews, but they were not Israelite. In fact, Jacob is the father. His name was changed from Jacob to Yasharel. So then you have all his sons and descendants, and his seed were Israelites. So you can be a Hebrew and not be. Some people say, I'm a Hebrew. Well, it might be so. You might be a Hebrew. Doesn't mean you're an Israelite. You can be a Hebrew, not be an Israelite. You know, you a Hebrew? Yeah, I'm a Hebrew, but more importantly, I'm an Israelite, because you can have Hebrews that are not Israelites. So Israelites are the descendants of Jacob. You got 12 tribes there. Those are the Israelites. So Esau was a Hebrew, but Esau was not an Israelite. He was a Hebrew, but not an Israelite. So when we look at trying to understand this through their lens. So verse number 3, he says, thou shalt have no Elohim before me. Going back to Genesis 3:22, what did Elyon or Yahuwah, Elyon, what did he say? In Genesis 3:22, Genesis 1:26, Genesis 3:22 or 21. Is that, which one did I call? I thought it was 22. What is? But what does it say? One of us. One of us. Speaking of the council that he sits in, those councils of Elohims. So they become one of us. Yes. And if they were one of us and they can procreate, what was Adam? Was Adam, he was what? A son of Elohim. Right? He was a son of Elohim. What was your question? Mm-hmm. I don't think he wants us to have anybody but him, because he goes on to tell them, I am a jealous Elohim. And notice now, he was the one that cut a covenant with Yasharel. He didn't cut a covenant with no other nation. No other nation cut a covenant with him. He cut a covenant, and when you make a covenant, there has to be some blood. Somebody's got to give their life. And so the blood was placed upon Yasharel. It was, remember we read about Elohim. And when you get into that yoke, there's a covenant and an oath, right? We read that, a covenant and an oath. And when you enter into that covenant, there's blessings if you keep it, and there's curses if you break it. That's what happened with us when we cut a covenant with Yahuwah. So when he says no other gods before me, he doesn't want you to have anything to do with any of those other L's. Oh yeah, they sit in his council. Well, he told us that, and well, he created it. He created it. There, who remembers that story? I think it's in Second Kings where, who was it? Rahab. Was it Jehoshaphat was going to go to war? Yeah, yeah. So up in the council, in the Shamaim, up in his council, in the Shamaim, he says, what are we going to do with, you know? And one of them says, I know well, there was two of them. One of them said something, I thought. We'll have to look at that again. But I thought one of them made a condition to Yahuwah. And then another one said, I'll be a lion spirit. I'll get into the mouth of his prophets. And then Yahuwah says, go, you go and do it. So it's not that he needs one, it's that he created one. He created one. Yeah. Well, even when they came out of Egypt and they made a covenant with him at Mount Sinai, and because Moses was up in the mountain too long, they told Aaron, what'd they say? Up, make us a God. And we'll say, this is the God that brought us out of Egypt. Yahuwah, now the Most High, El Elyon, Yahuwah, now he was pretty upset. He was pretty upset with them, you know, because they broke the covenant in less than 40 days. Now notice one thing about Yasharel, because even in Leviticus chapter 18, he says, I brought you out of Egypt. I don't want you to be anything like Egypt. I'm taking you into the land of Canaan, but I don't want you to be anything like them. But what did they do? Even you go through all of it. They always were mixing with these other people and accepted their gods. Solomon, and Most High Yahuwah he loved Solomon. He gave Solomon, didn't ask for no riches or nothing. He says, I want wisdom and knowledge. I know he said wisdom that I might judge your people. That's all I want, wisdom. And he says, because you asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you wisdom, but I'm going to add all this stuff unto you. And then he started to fall in love with strange women, and they turned his heart. He even made groves and, temples and stuff for their gods. And that, Yahuwah's like, again, he had to deal with his people and judge them. Because with us, even like Shaul says in 1 Corinthians, the 8th chapter, he said there be gods many and lords many, but to us, only one. To us, only one. We know the Most High Yahuwah. In fact, that's the only one that we even should have a relationship with. That's why he forbid Yasharel to mess with any kind of witches and warlocks. Don't even go to them. He said, suffer not a witch to be burned. And when King Shaul went to the witch of Endor, cut him off. Because Yahuwah said, don't have none of them. He says, I've chosen you as my own. You're my inheritance. There are other gods ruling over these nations. uh, Roman mythology, Greek mythology, um, and they even bring it into their Roman religion, and that's who they believe is the a god up in the Shamayim that rules over the waters. Yeah, and then they have that. They even represent it with that one hat. That what do you call that hat? It's the fish thing because because they believe that there's waters in the Shamayim and there's a God up there and that's their God, you know. But for us, when I say El Elyon or I say the Most High, you wouldn't have to say the Most High if there was nobody else. He's over all the gods. He even said in Psalms 82 at the end, he says, after I judge all the earth, I'm going to inherit all the nations. He's going to put all these gods in order. Not only is Yahusha going to be king over Yasharel, but he's going to be king over all nations. He's going to be over all nations because he's going to reign over all the earth. And there is going to be other nations on the earth. Yasharel is not the only nation. There's going to be other nations that'll be here. And Yahusha is going to rule over them. Because when he made a covenant with Yasharel, Yasharel were supposed to be priests and a priestly nation. So if there were going to be priests as a nation, if there's no other people to be, because a priest is a go-between. It's a go-between between heaven and earth. You got a go-between. It's a priest. And so if they're going to be a priest, you got to have other nations because he says you're a royal priesthood, a holy nation. It's for all of us. There's so many verses that I can get. But in Isaiah 60, chapter 60, Isaiah chapter 60, verse number 1, he says, arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of Yahuwah is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But Yahuwah shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. So darkness and gross darkness is ignorance. It's not knowing. People don't know who Yahuwah is. I'm convinced a lot of Israelites don't know who Yahuwah is. Because to know him, to hear his voice and to obey his voice and keep his commandments, that's to know him. He says, if you love me, you're going to keep my commandments. That's if you love me. You're going to keep my commandments. He says, depart from me, I never knew you. Why? Because you worked iniquity. Somebody that's working iniquity, he doesn't have a relationship with them. I don't have a relationship with somebody who works iniquity. He says in Ezekiel 18, he says, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son. The soul that sinneth, it's going to. And then Shaul picks it up in Romans chapter 6 and says the wages of sin is death. So a lot of us don't know Yah. Because if you know Yah and you have a relationship with Yah, that's why he says in 1 Yahukanan, if the seed remains in you, you cannot. Because the seed remains in you. You got to have that seed. You got to have Torah. You got to have Yahuwah. A seed is not dead. Who knows what a seed? When you look at a seed has life in it. It produces. A seed is to produce. And I had my first harvest of green beans. I got a bag of green beans off of my garden. But you plant the seed. Now, I got more green beans in my harvest than seeds that I planted. That's just it's the law of sowing and reaping. The law of sowing and reaping, because a lot of times you can sow a seed of sin, and that's just a little lie, and it'll come back like an avalanche. It'll turn your whole life upside down. Just a little sin. I mean, if you look at Abraham and Sarah, it was Sarah got up. She didn't want to wait. Take that bondwoman, and she's going to have a baby. It's going to come through my knees. It's going to be like my son. That one action is still being felt today, because a seed was sown, and you always get back more than what you sow. For the people who don't believe in law, don't believe in that one. Sowing and reaping. All right. So gross darkness that's just ignorance. But he doesn't want his people to be ignorant. Right? Because he says in Hosea 4 and 6, he says, my people are destroyed and because you rejected me, I'm going to reject you. Because you rejected my knowledge. But he don't want us to be in gross darkness. Other nations don't know him. We're supposed to know him. If anybody should know who Yahuwah is, it should be his people. The ones that he cut a covenant with. And not only did he cut a covenant at Mount Sinai, but then he also cut a covenant where? At Calvary. He cut a covenant at Mount Sinai. And when they said, give us a king, we want a man over us, he says, okay, I'm going to cut another covenant with you. I'm going to give you my son. And then they said, we don't want him. See, that's Yasharel. That's why he calls us a peculiar people. Man, these folks are just peculiar. And that's why he said in the wilderness, he said, he told Moses, I seen this people. This is a stiff-necked people. These folks but he says, I love them, but I'm going to judge a lot of them, and a lot of them are going to perish. But I love them. I love them. But he's always got a remnant, and we even see that with Shaul in the 11th chapter when Elijah thought he was the only one. Everybody's forsaking you. Yeah, I'm the only one, and I'm about to die. He said, oh, no, wait a minute, Elijah. I have 7,000. Haven't bowed the knee to. So he's always had a remnant of people that know him. And if you say you got his Ruach, that Ruach that you have is supposed to search the deep things of Elohim. And if you got his Ruach in you, aren't you obeying his voice? Aren't you hearing his voice? Aren't you hearing his commands? Aren't you hearing his sayings? I think that's what Yahusha said at one time. He says, what, you guys can't hear what I'm saying? Don't you hear what I'm saying? But a lot of them, they couldn't. Because but the verse number 3, he says, and the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. That light is your understanding of Torah. How can I prove that in the New Testament? That light is your understanding of Torah. How can I prove that? Where does light come up with Yahusha in the Beatitudes? What does he say? In the Beatitudes. I'm almost give it to you. Ye are the light of the world. Let your light so shine that men might behold your good works and then glorify our Abba in the Shamaim. That's the light that comes upon you. That's the light. I know his Torah. I'm learning his Torah. I'm still learning Torah. But Torah is those instructions that he gives us, and I have to put it to work. Because that's my light. And I know y'all don't believe me. One more verse, maybe. Isaiah, we'll go back to Isaiah 8 and verse number 20. Remember, he says, let your light so shine, that he might behold because ye are the light of the world. He says, you're going to shine your light to the Gentiles because you cut a covenant with me. I didn't cut a covenant with them. You cut a covenant with me. And so now, not only am I going to save you, but through you, other nations are going to be saved because they're going to come to your light. I think that's what Torah says. Didn't we just read that? Yeah, okay. Verse number 20 here. Oh, my time is up. Man, y'all, it's 9 o'clock already. To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. You can't speak according to the law and the testimony. If you can't speak to that, it's because you don't have no light. You don't have no understanding. You don't have because understanding is light. And that's what it says. They have to come to our light. They have to come to our understanding. And so he is giving Yasharel, and that's why he gives us Mores and Moras, Zakins and Rahas and elders, and he gives us, and he's placed us in his the whole world is his vineyard. And so he scattered them all. Y'all scattered into all nations, so I'm raising them up in all nations. But it's us that don't like it. We got a problem. I got a problem with everybody. Well, if you got a problem with everybody, then everybody probably got a problem with you. I don't like this. But I'm not saying everybody's right, but I am saying that Yahuwah is opening up the understanding of his people. And sometimes the understanding that he's opening up to us, the way we explain it a lot of times might not be to our liking. But he is giving Yasharel that understanding because we have to show forth the good word. He wants our light to shine because Gentiles are going to come to our light. Otherwise, the prophecy can't be fulfilled. It can't be filled. If we remain in gross darkness, prophecy, who else is going to be the light of the world? Who else is going to show the world light? Who else is getting light right now? It ain't the Roman religion. Roman religion, they got no light. They think they got light. But it's not the light of Torah because nobody with the light of Torah is going to say it's done away with. You're going to use Torah because you'll hear. Okay, so that's just the first commandment. And you're dealing with thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Trying to get understanding of what El Elyon, Elohim, and then Yahuwah, because he actually gives us his name, Yod He Ud He. But he didn't give us Yod He Ud He to the time of Moses when he cut that covenant with the nation. Because before it was with the family, and the family knew him as El Shaddai, or the Almighty One. This is the Almighty. And the Almighty appeared unto Abraham. So one thing I just kind of said something, and we kind of talked about it before, but if Adam was a son of God and he was made like the gods, but he was human, he was a son of God, so that means his seed, and the seed was placed, because that's how you're a son. In order to be a son, that means he places the seed in you to procreate. That's why you're a son. And he told him that, right? Right? So, and we also had to figure out where the land of Nod came from. If Adam was the first one, and he had his first two kids was Cain and Abel, then how could he go to a land of Nod that they already people live in their society, civilization, everything? Wait a minute, where did these folks come from? Because there's things in Torah we don't have all the books, and it does take other books to open up some of the understanding of Torah. Because how do you explain Cain went to another east of Eden? He went to a community. He went to it was already populated. And then, as we talked before, how could the sons of Elohim impregnate women on earth? If they're the fallen angels and they come down from heaven, did they come down with the ability to procreate? You know, are we? So when we say sons of God, are we saying? Because see, Abraham was a son of God. He was son of Elohim. It says that even in the New Testament when we get to, what is it? Luke. Luke goes all the way back, I think. Luke, it goes all the way back to Adam, the son of Elohim. So Adam was a son of Elohim. So there's some points to think about. Did he have sons before the seed of sin was passed down? Did he have sons before the seed of sin passed down? And if he had sons before the seed of sin, were they the sons of Elohim? Because they would have been made like Adam. Now we know Adam could procreate because it said he had sons and daughters. And another thing that we have to reconcile is Romans chapter 5 and verse number 14. We got to reconcile this. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam, which is at the beginning creation, to Musha. Now here's the key. Even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression. They were not in the seed line of sin. He had sons that didn't have sin on them. And then where did not? I mean, there's just some things that are, there's some questions that aren't answered. There's some questions that are, now we can, what do you call that? We can surmise, or there's another word I want to use. We can analyze, we can surmise, we can interpret, or there's another word I'm looking for. When you inject your own theory into something, what is that called? Or is there a word for that? Okay, anyway, this is something that we have to look at, because these men died, or this population of people died, because it says them, male and female, they died even though they were not of the seed line of sin, because that's what it means here. They had not sinned. That the seed of sin didn't come into Adam, well, obviously after they transgressed. It was a transgression, and that's when and he says, then remember what we read in Genesis 3:22? They have become like us, like the Elohims. So now we got men on earth that are like Elohims. They become like us. We can't let them live forever. That's why he moved the tree so that they couldn't eat of the tree and live forever in that condition. So death had to pass even over the ones who had not sinned. They didn't have the same seed line of sin in them like Adam. Then Cain, we see what Cain did to his brother Abel. But there's just something. And then so we got this group of people. We got Nod. We've got the sons of Elohim that seen the daughters. But the sons of Elohim were able to procreate. And then we collide, because Yahusha says in the resurrection, you won't be procreating in the resurrection. Not those who are coming back from that dimension. And like us, we're going to be changed. We're going to have a body like Yahusha. And I don't want us to get the mindset that the whole earth is going. No, there's going to be people on earth, even when he reigns for 1,000 years. There's people here. There's nations here for 1,000 years. Then on the new heaven and new earth, there's going to be nations. Remember, he says he's going to inherit all nations. Okay, any questions, comments? It's 9/11. 9/11. Questions, comments? Remember something that Aristotle said. It's an educated mind that will, remember I said, an educated mind will consider or entertain an ideal without what? Without accepting it. That's what Aristotle said. He said a lot of things. But I think I can quote Aristotle because Shaul quoted Epimenides, and he quoted another Greek philosopher. And we read it, it's in our book. And we read it and we think it comes from the shaman, it came from a Greek philosopher. Another thing that Aristotle said is, a friend to all is a friend to none. Everybody's my friend. Well, you probably don't have a friend. What you're saying is you don't. I know it, right? I mean, really, a friend, true friend, come on, you don't have a lot of true friends. You just don't. You don't. Yeah, all right. If no questions or comments, all right, we're going to bring this to an end. We're going to say shalom, shalom. We'll be back on the Shabbat. And let your light shine. Let your light shine, that somebody might see your good works and glorify Abba. Who are y'all people? Because I had somebody out here. I was here on the first day of the week, just last week, and she drove up, got out of the car. She said, I've been waiting. She says, I come by here, ain't nobody here on Sunday. I said, because we don't worship on Sunday. We don't worship on Sunday. When do y'all have church? Well, we worship on the Shabbat. We have our service on the Shabbat. On Saturday, I had to say Saturday. And she says, oh, okay, I'm going to be here. So, and let's remember those in our prayer. Debbie Jackson and her grandsons, Emal Smith, Coty Joy, Stewart, any others, Emal Dorothy VC, and all those on the prayer list. Any questions or comments? Nobody got? All right. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming on in. We're going to say shalom, shalom. We're going to see you on the next Shabbat.